Hello and welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic for the third in the series of my speed solving attempts at the Grand Prix Round 7. Now, the question's been asked, how are you doing? So I've set up this spreadsheet to show us the various puzzles I'm attempting in order. Now, what I've decided to do is not do all the 6 classics as they appeared in this script at the beginning, but to mix them with a variant. So there's always a variant in every video. So they're not being solved in order, but I've noted down the points value on the script, totaling up to 600, and therefore the par time in seconds, which adds up to 90 minutes in the end. So then there's my time in seconds for the first couple of puzzles here, any percentage I've saved against the par time, and then the overall par time, my overall time, and how far ahead or behind I am of that par time. So as you can see, not doing all that well after the first 2 puzzles. Now, I will emphasize that on the low points value puzzles, the fact that I'm using the software rather than doing it on paper, I think probably adds somewhere in the region of a minute per puzzle, and therefore I think I'm being a little penalized by the software, but over the whole piece, that should only add about 15 minutes to my time, even if that's correct, and it might be generous to me. So I'm hoping to get the percentage I am behind the clock down to either my normal kind of 20-25% or maybe 30%. But I think I'm kind of more heavily penalized on the easier puzzles. And really, classics with 14 points are incredibly low value. It either means that there's been quite heavy weighting on the harder puzzles, or they're incredibly hard, and I guess we'll find out when we get to them. There are some at the top end of the quiz at the top end of the paper worth 73 points and 85 points, which suggests they should be taking an expert 11 or 12 minutes. That's just, we'll see how well we do when we get there. But for now, I'm just going to fill in the results from the second video as well, where things went a little better. I certainly had a lower time in seconds for both the classic and the variant, considerably for the shaken clones. I was within 5% of the par time, so I was quite pleased with that, although I didn't crack it. And my percentage ahead dropped quite significantly across that shaken clones puzzle, or my percentage behind the par time, to 54%. So it's certainly moving in the right direction. And let's hope that today's puzzles do the same. So I'm just going to start and set off my solve of the classic. And here it is. So there's a very symmetrical arrangement. Turns out to be quite useful once one spots that regularly the kind of interior digit in the rows and columns is actually resolved. So that 1 is resolved by a 1 in column 9 and a 1 in column 8. So the only place for a 1 in column 7 is there. There's a similar situation with 8s there and with 4s down at the bottom, because this given layout is 4-way symmetrical. It didn't quite work up at the top, but that was a really good start. And look, I've already managed to finish a box over here on the left, which I normally regard as quite a big step into the puzzle. And that's, 45 seconds in, a box was filled. I could certainly complete row 6 now if I was looking at that. And that would be helpful going forward. So very little Snyder notation done so far. And now I'm just in a phase of wondering, where do I turn next for something useful in the puzzle? And not quite finding it. That 5's interesting. That's been resolved by the fact there has to be a 5 in the bottom row in this central box here. And with the 2 5s we've managed to place here, that cell is the only place left for a 5 in the bottom right. And again, looking for similar numbers at the top, with those 1s, 5s and 4s all placed in pairs of cells in the top left. I couldn't help thinking something there could finish up, but I couldn't do it. But I've come back to the box on the right, which I should really have concentrated on more in that first minute, and managed to finish it off now. and then the rest of the puzzle is following quite swiftly. Column 8 and then column 2, and it's almost as though it was set up to allow this to happen in order. Then looking at 9s, I've been able to establish that this 9 and this 9 meant that the 9 in the top right was indeed in the absolute corner. That feeds back down into this bottom box. I've got a triple up here. I mean, this puzzle's going pretty quickly, and I think on paper, I really do believe that I would be about a minute quicker. I think this one might be done in, that would have been better. 3 and 8 obviously have to be in row 3 in these two cells, and because of that 8, it must be 3 there and 8 there. So, I mean, there's still time I could be saving for sure. And in fact, I think this wasn't quite the quickest part of the puzzle, although it's getting a bit better now. But still, nearly done as we come up to 3 minutes, and probably only one deduction needed at this point to just be on a completely completing part of the puzzle. Pairs already established down here and down here. Yeah, I'm just looking, how can I resolve these 5s? And I'm worried that I'm going to have to bifurcate to get them established, which would be a real waste of time, having got so far so well. But look, that 3's resolved the 5. Okay, so we're pretty much done now. Now it's just filling in everything that's left. And although I think some of you think I'm fairly quick at that, you should see some of the experts when they get this stage of a puzzle. I mean, the numbers literally go in within less than a second of each other every time, and I'm quite jealous of that finishing ability as well. But nonetheless, given my abilities with software, that's not bad, and a time of 3:50, it's all right. It looked like it was going to be better at some point. Now, the variant that we're doing this time is an irregular, and this is not my favorite puzzle type. Of all the puzzles that I really struggle with compared with the times of the experts, I think this might be the one that regularly causes me the most problems, which is ironic being an irregular, but there we are. But there's been a decent start up here. Because of the number of givens in this top right box, 9 was fairly easy to place, given a single 9 over there. Then there was 6, 7, 8 left to go, and 7, 8 gave us the 6. Coming down here, I noticed this had become a naked single, which was reasonably helpful. Haven't really used the kind of cutting off logic yet, but I'm beginning to now. So if you imagine that this bottom row was cut off from the grid, then these 3 cells above it in this box must be the same as these 3 cells below that line over here. So they had to include a 2, and given that I've placed a 2 in one of these 2, it had to be there. And again, I might be able to use that later. Now, similarly here, these 2 cells that stick out of the 4 right columns must be the same as this cell and this cell. So they must include a 9, and I've been able to place a 9 there. I mean, you could prove that another way by looking at the various cells of this box that could contain a 9, and now that we've got that 9 placed, it's none of those in column 6, nor that one. But it's kind of 2 different ways of looking at the same problem, and again, I'm using this, the triple must be the same as this triple to make some progress down there, at least in notation. And I mean, for me, this puzzle's going reasonably well. I am occasionally mixing candidate notation with Snyder notation, which is quite dangerous. This 1-4, for instance, was the 2 possibilities left for this cell, given everything in the row and column. But hopefully that's not going to kind of trip me up when I suddenly misinterpret any notation. And that 1-4 pair has been incredibly helpful. Because of this 1-4 pair here, you could tell that 1 and 4 are in the first 2 columns in this box. 1 and 4 clearly in the first 2 columns in this box. So in this box, this had to be a 1-4 pair. That enabled everything else to be placed. There were a couple of 3s to resolve where the 3 went. And now we're kind of moving along pretty swiftly. There's a 1-2-8 triple there, which can't be resolved, and a 3-7 pair up there. Again, Actually, that can't be an 8 because of the 7-8 pair over here, but getting a lot of Snyder notation filled in the boxes now. That 1-4 pair has now become not just candidates notation, but also Snyder notation. And there's a useful 2-3 pair here, which in fact gets rid of the 3 possibility down here and leaves that to be the 3 in the box at the bottom, which would have been a very helpful thing to spot a little quicker. I think I've got there now, have I? No, still didn't notice that the 2-3 pair was ruling out 3 from there, and that would have been a bit useful to have got that done a little quicker. I think I remember, there we go, done it now, that getting that step felt like a big step forward. And although not much of this odd-shaped box is filled in, it can now pretty much all collapse, which is very helpful. Again, not noticing the 7-8 pair there. Oh, finally, okay. Didn't notice it at first. And now that's really helped. Row 2's gone, the boxes on the left are pretty much done. A 3-6 pair up there is going to limit the possibilities in this box here. And I mean, I can tell you that for me, this is incredible speed on an irregular. It's presumably a fairly easy one. It appears reasonably early in the test. So, you know, I might still not make the par time on this one, but in practice, I'm delighted to get through an irregular without a lot of damage, and I think that's what's happening here. Still 9, 6, and 8 to go in this bottom box, and how do I resolve that 9? Oh yes, this 9 and this 9 knocked it out of the columns. So, still coming down to pairs here. That 5-8 is candidates rather than Snyder notation. And still just trying to find one more. Yeah, 5 and 4 in row 4 were resolved by this 4 down here. And now the rest of this tall box is pretty much completed. And apart from the 3-6, but we'll get to that in a moment. This 6-8 is now resolved because of that 8 that we put in up there. Those pairs have gone because of the 1 that came into this box. And now we're pretty much done, and it's just a case of finishing off. 5.5 minutes, should be done before 6. You know, as I say, that's a pretty good time for me. I'd be very interested to know how you got on with this irregular and how often you do solve irregulars. So 5 minutes 40 is the time I'll assume for that. Not bad. And that is the 2 puzzles for this run. So let's fill them in here as well and see how we're doing. So again, both negative, both over the par time. The classic, well, with both actually, this time I'm blaming the software and doing it electronically. But in practice, my percentage ahead or behind has fallen considerably, not with the classic, but with the irregular, which I did in just 34 seconds over the par time. And that, as I say, it's a very good result for me. It'll be very interesting to see next go. There's a classic and a 41-point fortress. That'll be the hardest puzzle we've seen so far. And then after that, the videos will always include something pretty hard and possibly 2 hard puzzles. So we'll have to see how we go as we get on. I'm hoping, I actually think I'm normally better at easier puzzles, but I'm hoping to get into 1 or 2 of them and keep bringing this percentage behind time down. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that was interesting to you, and hope you enjoyed the puzzles and had a go at them before watching me. See you again on Cracking the Cryptic. Bye for now.